All right, so diving in, deep dive style, into uh, the Balenciaga thing from back in 2022. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you sent over this research paper, the Balenciaga controversy. It's like the impact of all this stuff, consumer satisfaction, reputation, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
Super dense,
it is.
but really fascinating. Just like super quick recap,
Mm.
right? Balenciaga, they were what, the top luxury brand at the time?
I think they were, yeah, most
Most
places.
popular
Yeah.
globally.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had those two ad campaigns, the one with the kids,
Yeah, the teddy bears.
teddy bears, BDSM gear.
Yeah.
The other one with the SCOTUS document about child pornography, just like
Huge.
PR nightmare.
Absolutely.
Hashtag cancel Balenciaga was
See, it
everywhere.
was crazy.
So this paper uses that whole thing to look at how three things, kind of who we blame, the crisis responsibility, how much we cared about the brand before, pre-crisis reputation, and how involved we were with them. All of that affected how satisfied people were with Balenciaga afterwards.
Yeah.
And this is relevant to everybody, right? Because it really gets
Wow.
into how we react when brands we like, maybe even love, they mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And whether our opinions are swayed by how much we liked them before, how involved we are, and who we think is at fault.
Totally.
So let's jump in. First things first, why do businesses even care about this consumer satisfaction thing so much?
Right. Right.
It can't just be about getting good reviews. There's got to be more to it.
Oh, absolutely. There's way more to it. Consumer satisfaction, it's a huge deal for businesses. It predicts so much about the future. Will people stay loyal? Will they buy more stuff? Will they stick around, even if, things get a little rocky?
Like even when they screw up.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A satisfied customer, so much more likely to be a repeat customer. And those repeat customers, that's the lifeblood of any business.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But I feel like there are different levels of satisfaction, right? Like I'm satisfied when I don't know, get my coffee in the morning.
Sure.
But I'm not going to write a poem about it, you know? Right, exactly. You've got that quick, what they call transactional satisfaction. You got what you paid for, you're good.
Yeah.
But the really powerful stuff, that's long-term relational satisfaction.
Okay.
That's the feeling you get when, a brand, they get you, they meet your needs, they maybe even surprise you sometimes.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. That's where you build these strong relationships, and those are what turn into loyalty, good word of mouth.
So for companies, it's more about building those deeper connections, not just like racking up sales one time.
For sure.
Okay, that makes sense. So with Balenciaga, right, this research, they actually talked to people after this scandal.
Right, yeah.
So we're not just looking at like that initial knee-jerk reaction.
Not just the heat of the moment.
But like the lasting impact on how people felt.
Exactly.
So let's get into that first factor we talked about, the crisis responsibility. The paper says that almost 70%, like 69.1% of people, didn't actually blame Balenciaga directly for the trosis.
Right.
But like those were their ads.
Yeah.
How do you not?
It's tricky, right? You look at it, you see those ads, Balenciaga's name is right there.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, 63.5% also said they didn't think other things were solely responsible either.
Huh.
So it means that figuring out who to blame in these situations, way more complicated than it looks at first glance.
Okay, so almost like you've got multiple suspects, lots of evidence.
Oh, totally.
Like a real-life game of Clue.
Exactly.
But how do people even make sense of those situations?
Well, that's where this theory, it's called attribution theory, that comes in. Have you ever, been stuck at the airport, delayed flight, and you're just fuming at the airline?
Yeah.
Even if it's not really their fault, right? It's weather or air traffic control.
Right.
But you blame them, the most visible target.
Yeah.
That's attribution theory. As humans, we need to find a reason, a cause for things, especially bad things.
Especially when it's unexpected, too.
Exactly, yeah. We want to know WHY, and sometimes we just jump to conclusions. So with Balenciaga, people were trying to figure out WHY those ads happened. Was it a choice? Was it internal mess-ups, a rogue employee?
Someone didn't do their job.
Yeah. Did someone not check things properly?
Okay, that's really interesting. So basically, they're trying to make sense of the chaos.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is the study, it found that the more people blamed Balenciaga directly, the less satisfied they were.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
It's huge. Like for companies, owning up, even if it's only partially, can be so important to keeping that trust with people.
Oh, for sure.
It shows you're being real with them.
Transparency.
Accountable, right? And that goes a long way.
Absolutely helps rebuild things.
Makes total sense. I mean, if a brand's just trying to dodge the blame,
Right.
it feels like they're not being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And that just erodes trust,
It does.
like immediately.
Yep. Yeah, it's like honesty. Best policy. Right. And that kind of brings us to the next thing, crisis involvement. Think about like your own relationship with brands, the ones you really, really love. Do you talk about them with your friends, research their stuff, maybe even like defend them online if someone's being negative?
Yeah, for sure. I have those brands, like a ride or die.
Yeah.
But then others, I'm just like, they're fine.
Right, exactly. And that's what they were getting at with this whole crisis involvement idea in the study. Like, does it matter how much you were into Balenciaga before all this went down?
Yeah.
Did it affect how you felt afterwards? And like, logically, you'd think the more into it you were, the bigger fan you are.
Yeah.
The more upset you'd be when they screw up.
Right. It's like you feel personally connected.
Totally.
And they do something you hate. It's like a betrayal.
It is, but here's the thing. They didn't actually find that.
What?
Yeah, they expected more involvement would equal less satisfaction, but the data didn't show it clearly.
So, wait, the die-hard Balenciaga fans, they weren't the ones leading the hashtag cancel Balenciaga charge.
It's not quite that simple. The researchers, they thought maybe it's how they measured involvement in the survey.
Okay.
Or maybe people just weren't that attached to Balenciaga in the first place. Remember, 71.4%, they said they didn't usually even talk about the brand.
Oh, right, yeah.
So not a super high level of involvement overall.
Okay, so maybe it is like how much of a fan you are. If I just
Right.
casually like something,
Mm-hmm.
their mistakes don't bug me as much as someone who's like obsessed, built their whole personality around it.
That's a great way to put it. And this brings up something interesting for, everyone listening. Think about it. How does your level of involvement with a brand change how you react when they make mistakes? Do you give your faves more leeway? Or do you hold them to an even higher standard?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right.
Something to think about for sure. Okay, so we've talked about blame. We talked about how much we cared about them before. But what about that halo effect? Like if we already liked a company, we're more likely to forgive them.
Ah, yes, the halo
I think
effect.
they get a pass.
And this study, it actually backs that up. They found those who had a higher opinion of Balenciaga before, they were more likely to still be satisfied afterwards, even with the whole mess.
Yeah.
Like their good reputation before, it built up this reserve of goodwill.
Yeah.
Helped soften the blow.
But didn't we say earlier that a lot of people were kind of just neutral about Balenciaga before?
Or right, 43.9%, just meh.
They weren't super fans, but not haters either.
Exactly. So does that mean this halo effect only works for brands we adore? What about the ones we just kind of know?
Right.
Does a scandal make us judge them harsher since we didn't love them to begin with?
It's like when your favorite celebrity gets in trouble.
Ooh.
Do you turn on them instantly? Or if you had good feelings before, you give them a chance.
Exactly. It's like the scandal tests your loyalty, even if you weren't super loyal to begin with. This is where it gets cool. It means our initial feelings about a brand can really change how we see their screw-ups.
So if I'm already unsure about a brand,
Mm-hmm.
a scandal might be what makes me say, nope, done.
Yeah.
But if I'm a loyal fan, I'm more likely to wait and see how they handle it.
Exactly. And that takes us to the last factor the researchers looked at, brand familiarity.
Oh, okay, this should be good. You would think the more familiar you are with a brand,
Right.
the harder it is to deal with their bad behavior.
Right.
Like if you see them everywhere,
You use their stuff.
yeah, it'd feel way more personal.
You'd think so, right? They thought that familiarity would make all those other things we talked about, responsibility, involvement, pre-crisis love, hit harder. But what they found was pretty surprising.
So knowing a brand really well didn't make people more upset.
Well, the results weren't what they call statistically significant, meaning familiarity didn't seem to play a huge role in how people felt about Balenciaga after. It could be the effects of those other things, who they dreamed, how much they liked him before. Those were already so strong. Familiarity didn't have much room to impact things.
So it's not that it doesn't matter.
Right.
But maybe it works differently in different situations.
Exactly. Maybe familiarity matters more for different kinds of crises or with different kinds of brands. Like imagine a brand, their whole thing is being ethical, sustainable.
Yeah.
Then they get caught doing something totally unethical. That familiarity, it might make people even more angry because it goes against everything the brand stands for.
Right, like a huge betrayal.
Exactly. And that gets to the heart of why this research is so cool. It's not about easy answers. It's about how complex this all is. Our emotions, how we see things, our relationship with brands, and what happens when those relationships get tested.
So where does that leave us? What are the big things you think people listening should be thinking about after this deep dive?
Well, I think the big thing is that crisis responsibility, it really matters. When a brand owns up to their mistakes,
Yeah.
it goes a long way to rebuilding trust. But if they try to shift, blame, downplay it,
Hide it?
hide it, that can really hurt them in the long run.
Yeah, no one likes to feel like they're being lied to, especially by a brand they trusted.
Right, exactly. And then, we can't forget about a good reputation to start with. If you loved a brand before all this, you might be more likely to give them another chance. But if you were kind of meh,
On the fence?
yeah, a scandal could be the thing that pushes you away for good.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that whole involvement thing, it's wild. It seems
Right.
like the more we care about a brand,
Mm-hmm.
the more their actions really hit us, good or bad.
It's true. It's like anything else, right? The more you care, the more it affects you. But this study, it actually brought up more questions than answers about involvement, which is always exciting.
Yeah, it's like we went down one path, but there are so many other possibilities. Like, does the type of crisis matter? Would we react differently if it was a product safety issue versus, a marketing thing like this?
That's a great point. And how does a brand's response to a crisis affect things? Does a real apology make a difference? Or are people less forgiving than we think?
So many questions.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with. This paper, it focused on how we felt before the crisis.
Pre-crisis, yeah.
But what about after everything calms down?
Right. Can a brand really come back from something this big? Is the damage permanent? And how does that affect how satisfied people are long term?
Right.
Does a good response actually help them recover? Or are some things just too messed up to fix?
Yeah, it's like, even if I forgive a brand, does that mean everyone else will?
Mm-hmm.
Does the public ever really forget?
These are all really important questions. Hopefully this deep dive gave you some new ways to think about this whole consumer satisfaction thing.
Yeah.
It's not just, do I like this product? It's the whole relationship we have with brands. And what happens when those relationships are tested,
Sometimes broken.
Yeah, sometimes broken.
Well said. I feel like we've just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore.
Totally.
But we encourage you, keep digging, keep asking questions, keep diving deep into this whole world of brands and how we react to them.
It's fascinating. And, think about your own experiences. Have you changed your mind about a brand after they messed up?
Yeah.
Did they handle it well? Or did they make things worse? And how did that change what you buy?
It goes both ways,
It does.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.